Chapter 31. The night passed in the blink of an eye, and it was already the morning of the next day. As soon as the sun rose, the entire Qingyang city was already bustling with noise and excitement. The streets and alleys were filled with people, and even outside the city gates, there were large waves of people gathering in the direction of Qingyang city. If one observed carefully, they would discover that although these people seemed to be rushing towards Qingyang city, they were actually gathering in the same direction. That was the most prosperous street in the entire Qingyang city and also the most central area of Qingyang city. There was an auction house called the Heavenly Cloud Auction House, which was controlled by the Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber of commerce in the southwest region. It was a true giant, and its influence spread throughout the southwest region. Its strength was so terrifying that even the four major forces of the southwest region did not dare to provoke it. The wealth it possessed was unimaginable, and even the savings of any one of the four major forces over the years could not be compared to the wealth of the Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce. If not for the fact that the Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce had no intention of competing for the position of the overlord of the southwest region, the four major forces of the southwest region would have already become history in the Yuanwu continent. From this, one could see the terrifying strength of the Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce. It was no wonder that even a small auction would attract so many people's attention. The Lu residence. Xiao Yan, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, disappeared in a flash. He stood in front of the wooden door of the room and reached out to open it. Outside the room, Lu Wabai was also standing in front of Xiao Yan's door. Just as he was about to knock on the door with his right hand, the wooden door in front of him suddenly opened. Lu Wabai was startled, and his body unconsciously jumped back half a step. When he saw Xiao Yan standing in front of the door, Lu Wabai reacted and hurriedly smiled at Xiao Yan. Haha, Elder has already woken up? That's good. Junior will take you to see the annual auction of Qingyang City. Perhaps you won't be interested in many of the items, but as long as you go, it will be giving face to the Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce. This will also be beneficial to my Lu clan, so? Alright, I said I'll be there. Let's go. Let me see if this Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce is really that big of a deal. Lu Wabai wanted to say something but was interrupted by Xiao Yan. Lu Wabai walked out and headed out of the Lu mansion. Lu Wabai hurriedly followed when he saw this. He walked together with Xiao Yan and explained some of the strength and background of the Heavenly Cloud Merchant Association. However, due to Qingyang City being located in a remote area, Lu Wabai did not know much about the Heavenly Cloud Merchant Association. He only knew that the Heavenly Cloud Merchant Association had arrived in the southwestern region 200 years ago. Although it had only been a short time, it had developed rapidly and had a deep foundation. It was not inferior to some of the older factions. This caused Xiao Yan to raise his eyebrows slightly. He quietly remembered this information in his heart. He had no choice but to pay attention to such a faction. It should be known that even someone as strong as Lu Feng had died under the combined efforts of those few older factions. Since this Heavenly Cloud Merchant Association was able to survive for 200 years, it definitely had some extraordinary strength. Hence, it was not wrong for Xiao Yan to pay attention to it. The horse pulling the carriage was a reddish-brown rank 7 magical beast, Fierce Sun Colt. This kind of magical beast was rare in the wild because most of them were tamed by humans and used as a means of transportation. Due to this horse's weak attacking strength, it was difficult for it to survive in the wild. Hence, any Fierce Sun Colt that possessed some intelligence would come to the humans' textile market to seek a good master in order to survive. At this moment, the Fierce Sun Colt in front of Xiao Yan had been accepted by Lu Wabai when it was at the initial stage of rank 6. It could be said that it was extremely loyal to Lu Wabai and Lu Wabai also took great care of it. If it was not an important person, Lu Wabai would definitely not summon it. However, at this moment, this Fierce Sun Colt, which was usually arrogant and overbearing, was trembling all over at this moment. It was as though it had seen some wild beast. This also caused Lu Wabai's heart to be shocked. It should be known that this Fierce Sun Colt had glared at an elite Dozun a couple of years ago. However, it actually revealed such a terrified expression when it saw Xiao Yan. Could it be? Thinking until this point, Lu Wabai's eyes suddenly shrunk. The gaze he used to look at Xiao Yan was filled with shock. If Xiao Yan really had that kind of strength, then his Lu clan would really have the hope of becoming one of the many factions in the southwestern region. Xiao Yan glanced at the Fierce Sun Colt in front of him, which was trembling non-stop. His eyelids twitched. He turned his head helplessly and said to Lu Wabai beside him. Looks like I won't be able to sit in this carriage of yours. Lu Wabai's heart was greatly shocked when he heard this. He was just about to say something when he saw that Xiao Yan had already turned around and walked toward the auction house. All that was left was a somewhat frail back and the Fierce Sun Colt that was trembling non-stop. After a short while, Xiao Yan and Lu Huabai brought the group of people from the Lu clan to the entrance of the auction house. The crowded flow of people did not disappoint this grand auction. Wave after wave of people continuously walked toward the entrance of the auction house. Although there were many strong men blocking the entrance of the auction house, they were still unable to completely block off the crowd. The entrance of the auction house was still extremely chaotic. When the crowd saw Lu Huabai and the others, their expressions simultaneously changed. In the past half a month, the people of the Qingyang city were rather surprised by the Lu clan's great defeat of the Wu clan. Although they heard that the Lu clan had the help of an almighty this time and directly suppressed the Wu clan with tyrannical strength, causing everyone from the Wu clan to lose their imposing manner and be directly killed on the spot, no one had seen that almighty. After all, in the situation of a life and death battle between the two clans, who would dare to show their faces? If they were mistaken as someone who wanted to benefit from the battle, they would even lose their lives. It was not worth it to lose one's life in order to watch a great battle. There were no people in the Qingyang city who were that stupid. Currently, the people of the Qingyang city saw that the people from the Lu clan had mustered such a large force for the sake of this auction. Everyone naturally felt quite surprised in their hearts when they saw that the people from the Lu clan had mustered such a large force for the sake of this auction. Various conversations began to spread on both sides of the street. There were also some people who noticed Xiao Yan, who was standing side by side with the head of the Lu clan and the first elder of the Lu clan. Immediately, a noise that soared to the sky appeared in front of the auction house. The head of the Lu clan, Lu Huabai, involuntarily frowned when he saw this. He exchanged glances with the first elder, whose expression was the same as his. He was just about to open his mouth and reprimand them when another bear-like roar beat him to it. All of you shut up. Move aside. All of you are blocking the path of the head of the Lu clan and the first elder. Those who do not wish to die, get lost. Xiao Yan looked toward the source of the voice when he heard this. The owner of the voice was a fierce-looking, bald man with a knife scar on his face. His body was tall and burly, appearing just like a wild bear. Under his perception, the strength of this middle-aged large man could be considered quite strong in this place. He possessed the strength of a 9-star dozong. At this moment, the middle-aged large man was looking at the passers-by by the side with a vicious expression. A cold snort was emitted from his nose and everyone shut their mouths. Only then did he look at Lu Huabai's group with a fierce-looking face. Adding the knife scar on his face, he appeared incomparably frightening. Lu Huabai and the others from the Lu clan felt comfortable when they saw this. However, the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth twitched intensely when he saw this smile. This smile was really unparalleled. Just by relying on this frightening smile of his, it was likely that even a person with the same strength as him would have his strength reduced by 20%. The expression on Xiao Yan's face was naturally seen by the large man. He was just about to become angry when he was stopped by Lu Huabai. Lu Huabai took a large step forward, cupped his hands toward the large middle-aged man and laughed. Ha 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 ha. Brother Barbarian Xiong, it has really been a long time since we last met. Ha 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 ha. Huh? The large middle-aged man called Barbarian Xiong by Lu Huabai wrinkled his brows, causing the knife scar on his face to wriggle like a maggot. It was a rather disgusting sight. Barbarian Xiong looked at Lu Huabai with an impatient expression. However, when he saw the deep wrinkles between Lu Huabai's brows and the slight shaking of his head, Barbarian Xiong's pupils slightly shrank. Since Lu Huabai was so sure that he wouldn't joke around with him for no reason, the young man beside him might not be ordinary. Could it be? Barbarian Xiong seemed to have suddenly thought of something. His eyes widened as he looked at Lu Huabai. However, when he saw Lu Huabai nodding his head slightly, Barbarian Xiong instantly came to a realization. In the next instant, Barbarian Xiong once again piled up his fierce-looking face and threw an extremely frightening smile at Lu Huabai's group. His smile was especially brilliant when he looked at Xiao Yan. However, when Xiao Yan saw this, the corner of his mouth twitched violently. He didn't say anything and forced a smile on his face as he replied to Barbarian Xiong. Barbarian Xiong didn't mind. He laughed heartily as he strode forward and chatted with Lu Huabai for a while. After that, he looked at Xiao Yan and cupped his hands as he laughed heartily. I presume that your distinguished self is the senior who helped the Lu clan defeat the Wu clan and become the #1 clan in the Azure Sun City, right? Xiao Yan faintly smiled as he glanced at Lu Huabai from the corner of his eyes. This caused Lu Huabai to awkwardly smile before he looked at Barbarian Xiong and said, "That's right. I was entrusted by someone to help the Lu clan gain a foothold in the southwest region." The moment these words were uttered, the bodies of everyone who heard these words suddenly shook. Their expressions instantly became interesting. Even the expressions of everyone from the Lu clan revealed a solemn expression at this moment. Even though Xiao Yan was a senior, he was really looking down on the people from the southwestern region by being so brazen. Only Lu Wabai ignored the expressions on the faces of the members of the Lu clan as he calmly looked at Xiao Yan. Barbarian Xiang raised his eyebrows upon hearing those words. Although it was easy to say that one could gain a foothold in the southwest region, if one didn't have a certain amount of background, then one's life and death would be sealed by saying those words. However, since the person in front of him dared to say such exaggerated words in front of the members of the Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce, he presumably wasn't some ordinary person. Barbarian Xiong's eyes turned as he cupped his hands towards Xiao Yan and laughed heartily. Senior is truly bold. I presume that with Senior's help in the future, not to mention gaining a foothold in the southwest region, even becoming a peak power wouldn't be a problem for the Lu clan. Then, I must congratulate Patriarch Lu. To be able to gain the help of such a senior, it looks like I'll need Patriarch Lu's help in the future. As Barbarian Xiong spoke, he turned his head towards Lu Wabai with a terrifying smile on his face. Lu Wabai wrinkled his brows upon seeing this. Just as he was about to reply, Xiao Yan beat him to it. Xiao Yan faintly smiled and replied without turning his head. Become a peak power in the southwest region? That will depend on the Lu clan's luck. In short, as long as the Lu clan isn't destroyed, the rest is up to you. If someone wants to destroy the Lu clan, I don't mind letting them have a taste of having their clan destroyed. As soon as Xiao Yan finished speaking, a cold light shot out from his eyes and tore apart the space in front of Barbarian Xiong, causing him to disappear into the void. Barbarian Xiong's face instantly changed and he hastily cupped his hands towards Xiao Yan. Yes. Senior is an almighty expert. Who would be so blind as to offend the Lu clan? Senior, please be at ease. Junior will live in Azure Sun City from now on and build the city together with Patriarch Lu. If anyone dares to offend the Lu clan, I, Barbarian Xiong, will be the first to not let them off. As Barbarian Xiong finished speaking, he even fiercely patted Lu Wabai's shoulder, causing Lu Wabai to curse inwardly. However, he endured the pain and grinned along with Barbarian Xiong. Lu Wabai naturally understood that Xiao Yan was making preparations for his departure. After all, once Xiao Yan left, the Lu clan's strength would be greatly reduced. Even with the golden plaque, it would be difficult for them to support the entire clan in a short period of time. If someone could take the initiative to help the Lu clan, then the Lu clan's troubles would be reduced by a lot. This would also be beneficial to the future development of the Lu clan. Therefore, although his body was in pain, it was worth it for the future of the Lu clan. Everyone chatted in front of the auction house for a long time. Finally, a deafening bell rang in everyone's ears. Only then did Barbarian Xiong react. Everyone had clearly come to participate in the auction, but because of Xiao Yan, they had stayed outside the auction house. This caused Barbarian Xiong to feel slightly embarrassed. He scratched his head and laughed towards Xiao Yan and the others. Ha 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 ha. I was so engrossed in chatting with Senior Xiao Yan today that I forgot about the auction. I'm really sorry, everyone. Haha. Let's go. After today's auction ends, I'll treat Senior Xiao Yan and everyone to a meal to make up for today's mistake, okay? Ha 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 ha. Senior Xiao Yan, please. Ha 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 ha. After saying that, Barbarian Xiong led Xiao Yan and the Lu clan into the auction house. Chapter 32. As soon as they entered the auction house, everyone's line of sight suddenly darkened. Everything around them was pitch black. The walls and floor of the entire auction house were pitch black. Under the investigation of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, he found that the walls and floor of the auction house were all built with inkstone. Moreover, from the visible lines on the ground and walls, it was likely that this auction house was built with an entire piece of inkstone. TSK. To be able to build an auction house from an entire piece of inkstone in this kind of place, the Heavenly Cloud Chamber of Commerce's financial resources were truly terrifying. Xiao Yan and the others followed Barbarian Xiong as they turned left and right before arriving in front of a pitch-black stone door. Barbarian Xiong took a step forward and arrived in front of the stone door. He extended his hand and placed it on the stone door. The Do Qi within his body circulated to his palm and was continuously poured into the stone door. The stone door slowly opened with a rumbling sound and a private room that was over 100 square meters appeared in front of everyone. Barbarian Xiong laughed heartily as he stepped to the side, allowing Xiao Yan to enter first. After that, he followed Lu Wabai and the others. After entering, Lu Wabai looked at the four walls that were emitting a soft light. The white and smooth floor, as well as the rows of incomparably comfortable seats, Lu Wabai couldn't help but click his tongue in admiration. TSK, different people, the treatment is like the difference between heaven and earth. Every time I come here, I only get an intermediate private room. I didn't expect Senior to come here casually. Moreover, he didn't make any special requests, yet you've already prepared everything. Heh. Barbarian Xiong, it seems like you've already planned to curry favor with Senior Xiao, right? Hearing this, Barbarian Xiong grinned mischievously as his face turned ugly. Xiao Yan wasn't surprised by this. He first found a seat and sat down. After that, everyone else also took their seats. Barbarian Xiang didn't sit down. Instead, he walked to the wall that was emitting a faint fluorescent light. Dou Qi burst out from his hand once again. Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows slightly. He could see that the wall, which was originally emitting a faint fluorescent light, had actually begun to become crystal clear at this moment. Circular water wave-like ripples spread apart, causing the entire wall to appear incomparably mysterious. A moment later, a crystal screen appeared before everyone's eyes. Behind the screen was a spacious auction hall. The auction hall was currently filled to the brim. Waves of noise rang through the auction hall, making it seem extremely noisy. A clear gong sound slowly resounded within the auction ground. Following the gong sound, the originally extremely noisy noise within the auction ground gradually weakened. Countless number of gazes were thrown towards the crystal platform. Their eyes were filled with a fiery heat. At this moment, Barbarian Xiang's sturdy figure turned around and sat beside Xiao Yan on the seat that had been reserved for him. Together with everyone else, he looked at the auctioneer on the crystal stage. Haha. Everyone, I presume that you're already somewhat impatient from waiting. Since that's the case, this old man won't say any more official words to annoy you. The white-haired old man dressed in luxurious clothes smiled as he looked at the black mass of heads in the auction house. Finally, his obscure gaze swept across the representatives of the factions from the other cities sitting in the front row. His loud and clear voice reverberated in the auction house endlessly. As an experienced auctioneer, he naturally knew what the people below wanted to see, and what they didn't want to see. Therefore, he had directly thrown away the nonsense introduction of the opening ceremony. However, the old man's move had indeed won the cheers of the entire auction hall. At the very least, even the representatives from the other powers sitting in the front row had faintly nodded their heads. As the annual auction, I believe that our Tianyun auction house has chosen Xingyang City as the main auction venue among all the other cities. I'm sure we won't disappoint you. Just as the old man finished speaking, he clapped his hands once again and announced in a clear voice. This old man announces that Xingyang City's Heavenly Clouds auction house will now begin. As the old man's clear voice fell, the huge crystal platform suddenly erupted with a dazzling light. After a long while, the strong light gradually dissipated. At this moment, on the crystal platform in front of the white-haired old man, on the auction stage, there was a long sword that was entirely dark green with a hint of cyan. Under the illumination of the lights, it reflected an extremely cold and beautiful luster. Looking at the traces of energy circulating on the sword's body, it was obvious that the sword's power was extraordinary. It must have come from the hands of a famous master. At this moment, the eyes of the people below the stage suddenly lit up. The white-haired old man was obviously very satisfied with this result. A satisfied smile appeared on his wrinkled old face, and his pair of shady old eyes narrowed into a thin line. The old man looked at the people below and slowly introduced the sword. This sword is called the Jade Water Orchid Sword. It is cast with jade water and cyan gold. It can cut iron like mud and has the ability to disappear once it enters water. It is invisible in water and is extremely suitable for water attribute cultivators. If it is paired with a high-level water attribute Dou skill, its power will double. It was a divine weapon that was hard to come by. If you are interested, don't be stingy with the money in your pockets. Money had to be measured by one's strength. With strength, wouldn't money be as worthless as dirt? Haha. As the old man spoke, he held the Jade Water Orchid sword in his hand. The sword body shook and a wave of ripples spread out around the sword body. The old man's other hand waved in the air and the water vapor in the air turned into water droplets. The water droplets squeezed into a football-sized water ball in the old man's hand. With a wave of his hand, the water ball immediately spread out and covered the entire sword body. In an instant, the Jade Water Orchid sword disappeared under the eyes of the people. In an instant, there was an uproar in the auction house. Everyone's fiery eyes were cast toward the white-haired old man standing on the crystal platform. The old man also knew the meaning of their eyes. He smiled slightly and said in a clear voice. The starting price is 500,000 gold coins. Everyone, please. Jade Water Orchid Gold, huh? It's not bad. Xiao Yan eyed the longsword and softly muttered. However, it did not attract much interest. When one's strength had reached his level, weapons were no longer that important. Moreover, he was already used to the heavy Xian ruler, this kind of weapon which could be used to attack and suppress others with its strength. A long sword was too far away from his level of interest. After all, this was only the beginning of the auction. The good stuff would naturally come later. Of course, because of Xiao Yan's experience, these items did not catch his eye. However, it did not mean that others would not. This sword had already become a rare divine weapon in the eyes of many water-attributed cultivators. Therefore, when the white-haired old man's voice fell, the auction house was filled with the sound of bidding. Congratulations, little brother, 15 million. Get the Jade Water Orchid sword. The bidding was very intense. It also caused the atmosphere in the auction house to rise rapidly. The first bidding lasted for a few minutes. Finally, the Jade Water Orchid sword was successfully auctioned off by a slightly skinny man in green with a face full of excitement at the high price of 15 million gold coins. When Xiao Yan saw this, he shook his head continuously. For a sword, he just threw out 10 million gold coins. How stupid was this cultivator? Instead of buying a sword, it would be better to buy some cultivation resources. The first round of bidding was very fast and very short. After all, that sword was not suitable for all cultivators. Therefore, there were not many people bidding for it. After a few more rounds of bidding, the auction had reached the middle stage. Finally, it was time for the people sitting in the front row to make their move. This time, when the auction item appeared, it attracted the attention of everyone present. It was a medicinal pill. Moreover, it was a Tier 7 zone-breaking pill. It could increase the chances of a peak Do Huang breaking through to the Do Zone class by half. This caused everyone in the auction house to be extremely excited. Many cultivators whose strength had stopped at the peak of the Do Huang class stared at the medicinal pill in the jade bottle on the stage with scarlet eyes. They almost rushed up to snatch it. Even the Lu clan, who had been quietly sitting in the high-class private room, looked at the old man on the stage with shining eyes, waiting for him to announce the starting bid. When Xiao Yan saw this, he curled his lips and shook his head repeatedly. This caused Lu Wabai to smile awkwardly. There was nothing he could do. After all, the strongest person in the Lu clan was only a Do Zong. At this moment, Barbarian Xiang had a serious expression as he looked at the zone-breaking pill. After bidding farewell to Xiao Yan, he walked out of the private room. Soon, under the direction of the white-haired old man, a new round of bidding finally began. The starting bid for this zone-breaking pill is 5 million gold coins. The white-haired old man looked at the crowd below the stage and said in a tone that was neither light nor heavy. However, when these words came out, other than the few people sitting in the front row and a few others, the entire auction house instantly fell silent. However, the white-haired old man continued to look at the crowd below the stage with a smile and did not say a word. After Barbarian Xiang killed the few cultivators who had tried to snatch the pill, everyone understood that the rest of the show belonged to the few large factions. Soon, the next round of bidding finally began. 20 million. The first to bid was a white-clothed man sitting in the front row. He was the son of the city lord of the city closest to Qingyang City. His name was Mo Bei, and he was an arrogant and despotic person. He had once tried to forcefully seize the Lu family's truck, but because of his father, the Lu family ended up leaving the matter unsettled. After Mo Bei, many people began to bid one after another. The price of the 7th grade zone breaking pill was actually raised to 70 million gold coins, and the owner of this price was Mo Bei. Lu Wabai had also bid a few times during this period of time. Whenever he made a sound, the crowd would discover that there was actually someone in the private room that hadn't been opened for a long time. However, when Mo Bei heard Lu Wabai's voice, he coldly smiled and his originally slightly wrinkled brows carried a trace of ridicule. In the end, Mo Bei's bid was still higher, and Lu Wabai was also suppressed by this high price. Lu Wabai's face was gloomy as he took a deep breath. As if he had made a decision, he stood up once again and looked outside the screen. 100 spirit coins. When Mo Bei heard this, his pupils suddenly shrank. He no longer spoke and resentfully returned to his seat. Chapter 33. As soon as Lu Wabai said this, the whole place became silent. Even the people of the Lu family who were sitting behind Lu Wabai were stunned. Only Xiao Yan looked at everyone strangely. After a long while, the white-haired old man on the stage came back to his senses. He slammed the wooden hammer on the auction table in front of him and said loudly. The master of the Lu family, Lu Wabai, bids 100 spirit coins once. Are there any higher bids? Everyone in the auction hall suddenly woke up. The originally quiet auction hall instantly became noisy, as if it was a market that had just opened for business. One by one, the elders of the Lu clan stood up one after another behind Lu Wabai. Their eyes were furious as they stared at Lu Wabai. However, due to Xiao Yan being present, no one uttered a furious reprimand. All they did was use furious gazes to stare intently at Lu Wabai. Lu Wabai was still considered calm. Even though he had spoken 100 coins, his eyes continued to look at the zone-breaking pill at a steady pace, waiting for the white-haired old man to make the final decision. After a while, the white-haired old man looked at the cultivators in the auction room with a smile. He slammed the wooden hammer in his hand and said loudly, "The master of the Lu family, Lu Wabai, bids 100 spirit coins for the 7th grade breakthrough pill." Congratulations to the master of the Lu family for winning the 7th grade breakthrough pill with 100 spirit coins. As soon as the wooden hammer fell, only a pang sound could be heard. The hammer fell, and the sound was settled. The white-haired old man's voice also entered the ears of Lu Wabai and the others. Lu Wabai expressionlessly sat on the seat. As for the other elders of the Lu family, other than the great elder Lu Xinqing, their expressions were all downcast. They let out a sorrowful sigh and loudly sat down on their seats. When the white-haired old man on the crystal platform took out another auction item, everyone in the private room turned their attention back to the screen. The white-haired old man took out a cloak and once again introduced the wonders of the cloak to everyone in a clear voice. Xiao Yan merely glanced at it before ignoring it. He turned his head to Lu Wabai by the side. Lu Wabai sensed the gaze that Xiao Yan shot over and did not dare to slight him. He turned his head respectfully to Xiao Yan and asked, "Senior, do you have any questions? Or are you interested in this cloak? If that's the case, this junior will immediately help Senior take him down." As she said this, she turned her head to look at the cloak. Xiao Yan curled his lips and asked Lu Wabai to turn her head back. Xiao Yan saw Lu Wabai's doubtful gaze, smiled and nodded. Only then did he open his mouth and ask curiously, "Hey, what is the spirit coin that you just used to auction the breakthrough pill? Tell me about it." Hearing this, Lu Wabai raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but frown. His expression was a little strange. He looked at Xiao Yan as if he was looking at an alien and asked, "Senior, you actually don't know what spirit coins are?" Xiao Yan's pupils shrank slightly when he heard the words, and his face changed slightly. He was stunned for a moment, then he rolled his eyes and continued. "In the past, I have always been training in the deep mountains. Although I have come out before, this is the first time I have heard of something like spirit coins. Therefore, please tell me about it. Let me see what use this spirit coin has. If there is an opportunity in the future, I will also buy a few million spirit coins to play with it." The corner of Lu Wabai's mouth twitched when he heard this. "Senior Xiao Yan, even if your strength has reached the Dosheng class, what do you think spirit coins are? A few million? Just the spirit coins that my Lu clan has accumulated over the past few hundred years and the Wu clan that you have exterminated previously, the total amount of spirit coins that our two clans have is only 20 to 30,000. You have just opened your mouth and asked for a few million spirit coins. I'm afraid that even if I were to rob, I would not be able to get so much spirit coins." Lu Wabai did not say these words out loud, and he did not dare to say them out loud. Earlier, Xiao Yan had clearly warned him that if he were to say anything that made Xiao Yan unhappy, Xiao Yan would be able to kill him with a slap. Therefore, after Lu Wabai pondered for a moment in his heart, he organized his words and opened his mouth to explain to Xiao Yan. Spirit coins are the true common currency of the world. They are different from gold coins. Spirit coins are forged from spirit stones that are agglomerated from the Earth's energy within the Earth's veins over a long period of time. One spirit coin is equivalent to 100,000 gold coins. However, there is definitely no one who is willing to exchange spirit coins for gold coins. After all, gold coins are merely worldly money. They are completely worthless to a true strong person. On the other hand, spirit stones are a kind of energy crystal that is filled with extremely pure natural energy. It can allow a practitioner to train faster and is a top-quality training resource. Moreover, spirit stones can also be used as the energy source for some formations and can be used to support the operation of the formations. Of course, spirit stones are also divided into low-grade, mid-grade, and high-grade spirit stones. The different grades of spirit stones are dependent on the amount of natural energy and the purity of the energy contained within. However, there are also some extremely rare top-grade spirit stones that can be directly absorbed and refined by cultivators to increase their strength. However, the rarity of these spirit stones is not inferior to some extinct spirit medicines. It is extremely difficult to come across them. Even if someone happens to come across one, they would have to quickly absorb and refine it. This is because once some strong people know that someone has a top-grade spirit stone on them, they would really be met with a fatal disaster. After all, as the saying goes, an ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Therefore, top-grade spirit stones are even rarer on the continent. Whenever a top-grade spirit stone appears, it will cause a bloody storm. When Xiao Yan heard this, he gradually understood the use of spirit coins in his heart. Spirit coins were completely incomparable to gold coins. It was no wonder that Lu Wabai only spent 100 spirit coins and the elders of the Lu clan were so angry. Xiao Yan took a deep breath and turned his head to continue looking at the fiery atmosphere in the auction house. At this moment, in the auction house, the white-haired old man was looking at the crowd below the stage with a smile. His eyes would occasionally sweep across the high-grade private room where Xiao Yan and the others were. After a long while, he slowly stretched out his hand under the impatient gazes of the crowd. In the palm of his hand, a palm-sized jade box lay quietly. The crowd below the stage frowned. It seemed that there were medicinal ingredients inside. This kind of thing was only attractive to alchemists. To them, the chances were too slim. The white-haired old man ignored the change in expression on the crowd's faces. Instead, he stretched out his hand and gently opened the lid of the jade box. Inside it, a scarlet fruit quietly stood. In an instant, the auction ground had become noisy. With the exception of Xiao Yan, everyone's eyes were fiery hot as they stared at the vermilion fruit within the jade box. Xiao Yan merely glanced at the vermilion fruit before ignoring it. He sat on the chair and dozed off, causing the expressions of Lu Wabai and the others to appear incomparably embarrassed. Xiao Yan's expression was extremely awkward. At this moment, the white-haired old man had a smile on his face. He looked at the crowd below with satisfaction. After a long while, he opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Haha, I believe that everyone is not unfamiliar with this scarlet fruit." "Haha, that's right. This scarlet fruit is the scarlet fire scarlet fruit." Once these words were spoken, the crowd below immediately went into an uproar. The scarlet fire scarlet fruit was the most attractive natural medicine to Do Huangs and Dozongs. The scarlet fire scarlet fruit grew in the depths of a volcano. It absorbed the fire spiritual energy within the volcano to help it grow. The scarlet fire scarlet fruit could absorb the fire spiritual energy and transform it into extremely pure natural energy and store it within the scarlet fruit. When a Do Huang or Dozong consumed the scarlet fire scarlet fruit during their breakthrough, they could directly break through the bottleneck and advance their strength. Moreover, if they were lucky, they could borrow the wild energy within the fruit to break through once again. It could be said that it was the most valuable item in the hearts of Do Huangs and Dozongs. Everyone in the auction house also stared at the scarlet fire scarlet fruit in the jade box in the white-haired old man's hand with excitement. The white-haired old man's face once again revealed a satisfied smile. His eyes swept across the entire auction house. Under the fiery gazes of the crowd, he slowly opened his mouth and said in a clear voice, "The owner of the scarlet fire scarlet fruit that is 400 years old can only be exchanged with spirit coins. The starting price is 10 spirit coins." Without any hesitation, the crowd below the stage immediately called out a price. 20 spirit coins. Humph. You still have the nerve to bid. I bid 50 spirit coins. 100 spirit coins. The fierce bidding from below the stage also caused Xiao Yan, who was sleeping with his eyes slightly closed, to slowly open his slightly drowsy eyes. He slightly raised his eyebrows and glanced at the screen in front of him. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Once again, he closed his drowsy eyes and fell into a deep sleep. That auction lasted for a very long time. It lasted for over 10 minutes. In the end, the scarlet fire vermilion fruit was bought by Mo Bei for the high price of 3,000 spirit coins. Even Lu Wabai was defeated in the end and helplessly sat back down on his seat. After the scarlet fire scarlet fruit was bought by Mo Bei, the white-haired old man's eyes swept across the entire auction house with a smile. The white-haired old man looked at the crowd and said, "I believe that all of you have obtained what you want today. Of course, it doesn't matter if you don't get it. Because all of you know that the following time is the time for you to exchange your items. As long as you don't fight, the Heavenly Clouds auction house will not interfere. Now, I announce that this year's Heavenly Clouds auction has come to an end." Wait. This shout caused the entire auction house to tremble. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw a tall and sturdy bald man with a fierce-looking face and a maggot-like scar on his face walking towards the center of the crystal stage. The shout of "wait" came from his mouth. The white-haired old man bowed towards Barbarian Xiong and respectfully shouted, "President! President!" Barbarian Xiong nodded his head and made a sound of acknowledgement. He walked to the center of the crystal stage and turned around to look at the crowd below the stage. "In today's auction, I plan to help a senior bid for a few more items. Everyone, you don't have any objections, right? You can be at ease. The items that the senior wants me to help him auction are items that you don't have the qualifications to see on a normal day. Today, the senior is in a good mood and wants to let you gradually see the world." "Oh. That's right. Something like the scarlet fire scarlet fruit. Compared to the senior's items, it's nothing more than trash." "Hua. The moment those words came out, the entire auction house went into an uproar. Mo Bei, who was seated in the front row, stood up with a fiery expression and asked Barbarian Xiong, haha. Since that's the case, may I know when President Barbarian Xiong will start the auction? Ha 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 ha. Alright, I announce that the auction will continue. Remember, the following items can only be auctioned with spirit coins. Hua. The entire auction house went into an uproar once again. Chapter 34. Barbarian Xiong let out a mischievous laugh. His fierce-looking face, coupled with the eye-catching scar, caused the corners of the mouths of the people below the stage to twitch. However, with the treasure in front of them, they couldn't care less about it. They could only forcefully endure the nausea in their hearts and continue watching. Barbarian Xiong grinned as he looked at the crowd. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in his huge palm. The contrast between Barbarian Xiong's palm and the jade bottle was a stark contrast. The people below the stage faintly wrinkled their brows upon seeing this. Clearly, if it were an ordinary pill, they wouldn't be interested in it. Barbarian Xiong let out a sneer. He opened the jade bottle and poured out a perfectly round pill the size of a longan fruit. As soon as the pill came out, an extremely rich pill fragrance immediately filled the entire auction house. The expressions of everyone present changed in an instant. Their gazes towards the fragrant pill were instantly replaced by greed and an extremely strong desire to possess it. Mo Bei, who was sitting in the front row, stood up. His face was flushed red from excitement as he looked at the pill in Barbarian Xiong's hand. He couldn't wait to shout out to Barbarian Xiong. President Barbarian Xiong, may I know how this pill will be auctioned? Barbarian Xiong smiled as he swept his gaze across the fiery gazes of the people present. In the end, he nodded his head towards the high-class box that Xiao Yan was in. This caused Mo Bei, who had been watching Barbarian Xiong, to slightly narrow his eyes. Following Barbarian Xiong's gaze, his brows slightly wrinkled. Wasn't that the box where Lu Huabai and the other members of the Lu clan were seated? Could it be that the senior that Barbarian Xiong was talking about was there? This caused Mo Bei's calm expression to slightly change. If that was really the case, then how could the Lu family be in that private room? Or could it be that all of this was Lu Huabai's doing? He wanted to deceive her and trick her. However, how could Barbarian Xiong help him for no reason? While Mo Bei's brows were still wrinkled as he pondered this question, Barbarian Xiong let out a hearty laugh. His bear-like laughter reverberated throughout the auction house. His sharp gaze swept across the entire auction house before he finally opened his mouth to speak. Good. Since young Master Mo has spoken, then I won't say anything more. First, let me introduce this medicinal pill to you. First, this medicinal pill is a grade 8 medicinal pill. As soon as those words were spoken, the entire auction house turned deathly silent. Even Mo Bei, who had a melancholy expression on his face, suddenly raised his head as he looked at Barbarian Xiong, who was standing on the stage, with an astonished expression on his face. 8th grade medicinal pills. Everyone present looked at Barbarian Xiong with bloodshot eyes. The sound of people swallowing their saliva resounded throughout the auction house. Barbarian Xiong let out a sneer. His gaze was as if he was looking at a group of idiots. After a long while, he opened his mouth once again. This pill is an 8th grade pill called the Spirit Cleansing Pill. It can allow a cultivator to cultivate at all times for a year. Even if they don't deliberately cultivate, the cultivation method will automatically circulate today and help the cultivator increase their strength. Moreover, if it is circulated together with the cultivation method, the speed will be even faster than usual. Hua. As soon as those words were spoken, the auction house immediately went into an uproar. Some people even stood up, wanting to act like the people before them and snatch the pill by force. However, they were pulled back by death. Those people who had made a move earlier didn't have a good price to pay. At this crucial moment, they were saved by the fear in their hearts. As they looked at Barbarian Xiong on the stage, the few people who had stood up resentfully returned to their seats. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable greed. Barbarian Xiong let out a sneer as he looked at the few people who had returned to their seats with a sneer. Due to the fierce look on his face, his smile was rather frightening. It also caused the few people to unconsciously tremble as traces of cold sweat dripped down from their foreheads. Barbarian Xiong's huge palm slapped the auction stage in front of him. The sound of the slap attracted everyone's attention. Nodding his head in satisfaction, Barbarian Xiong said in a clear voice. 8th grade medicinal pill, Spirit Cleansing Pill. The starting price is 200 spirit coins. As soon as those words were spoken, the entire auction house went into an uproar once again. Without any hesitation, Mo Bei stood up and shouted at Barbarian Xiong. I bid 500 spirit coins. As for the disciples of the other powers, they didn't fall behind in the slightest as they shouted one after another. 800 spirit coins. 900 spirit coins. I bid 1,200 spirit coins. Who dares to fight with me? I'll chop him up right now. As soon as those words were spoken, Barbarian Xiong coldly snorted as he glared at that person. Humph. Sir, your words are a little too much. That person was suddenly startled when he heard those words. His expression slightly changed as he apologized and resentfully returned to his seat. The bidding continued. 1,700 spirit coins. 2,000 spirit coins. 2,100 spirit coins. 2,500 spirit coins. 3,000 spirit coins. Mo Bei violently shouted as he looked at Barbarian Xiong with his scarlet eyes. As soon as he said 3,000 spirit coins, the entire auction house became silent. Everyone looked at each other and helplessly shook their heads. It seemed that the 8th grade spirit cleansing pill was already in Mo Bei's pocket. Barbarian Xiong had a frightening smile on his face as he raised his wooden hammer. Just as he was about to strike down, a vigorous middle-aged man's voice suddenly resounded throughout the auction house. I bid 5,000 spirit coins. In the next instant, everyone's gazes instantly turned towards the high-class box. That was because the voice had come from there. Even Barbarian Xiong had a blank expression on his face as he looked at the high-class box. As for Mo Bei, his scarlet eyes gradually regained their clarity as he looked at the high-class box with a strange expression on his face. Mo Bei blinked his eyes a couple of times as he frowned. Could it be that this expert didn't recognize Lu Wabai and that Lu Wabai was willing to pay a huge price in order to climb up to him? After hesitating for a moment, Mo Bei ultimately didn't follow up. It wasn't difficult to bid a high price. However, the key point was that he didn't have the ability to do so. His ability came from his father, who was the city lord. He couldn't represent his father. In the end, Lu Wabai won the 8th grade spirit cleansing pill for 5,000 spirit coins. Although it was a little painful, Lu Wabai was confident that he would be able to break through to the Dozun class within 2 years if he could make good use of this 8th grade spirit cleansing pill. Thinking about the strength of a Dozun, Lu Wabai's heart calmed down. After all, as long as he had the strength, what did he lack? In this world, one's fist spoke. If one's fist was big enough, there was nothing one couldn't obtain. Moreover, these things were auctioned off by the Anti-Inflammatory Association. In the end, those spirit coins would end up in the hands of his own people. He would just take it as using this opportunity to climb up to Senior Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's narrowed eyelids slightly opened as he glanced at Lu Wabai's resolute face. Then, he closed his eyes once again and quietly fell asleep. Barbarian Xiong glanced at the black mass of heads in the auction house. He slapped the auction table with his palm, causing a loud sound to resound throughout the auction house. Everyone's gazes were once again attracted by his palm. Barbarian Xiong grinned in satisfaction as his robust voice sounded out once again. He extended his palm forward and a silver scroll appeared in his hand. After which, he said in a clear voice. The second auction item is the D high-level Qi method, Lightning Dragon Sky Roaring Art. Immediately after, Barbarian Xiong waved his other hand forward and another silver scroll appeared in his other hand. With a wave of his arm, the scroll opened. Bang! In an instant, a lightning dragon soared out from the scroll and soared into the sky, causing waves of thunder to ring out. As the lightning dragon soared, the air trembled as strands of lightning shot out from nowhere. Seeing this scene, everyone under the stage flew back one after another and scattered in all directions. Seeing this, Mo Bei wanted to withdraw from the stage. However, he saw Barbarian Xiong throw the scroll into the air with his other hand. With a palm strike, an energy palm condensed from Do Qi appeared out of thin air and shot towards Mo Bei. Mo Bei's expression changed drastically when he saw this. His body, which was flying toward the crystal stone platform, made a sharp turn in the air. He stepped on the edge of the crystal stone platform and shot out. The huge energy palm also gradually retreated in the air and finally disappeared. After the energy palm disappeared, Barbarian Xiong's voice that was filled with anger rolled out. Great young Master Mo, could it be that you want to break the rules of my auction house? Are you trying to snatch something from me? Let me tell you, this isn't your northern Mo city. Hearing this, Mo Bei was startled. He knew that Barbarian Xiong was truly enraged this time. He hastily stopped retreating and cupped his hands towards Barbarian Xiong as an apology. I naturally know the rules of the auction house. However, I was unable to restrain my curiosity after seeing the might of the Qi method. Therefore, I wanted to go up the stage to investigate. I was careless and almost caused a huge mistake. I hope that President Barbarian Xiong can forgive me. Barbarian Xiong glared at Mo Bei. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a bone-chilling cold snort. When this cold snort came out, the entire auction house instantly went silent. Everyone didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Their bodies couldn't help but shiver. It was as if they were in 10,000-year-old ice, causing them to feel extremely cold. When Barbarian Xiang heard this cold snort, his body instantly turned sluggish. After an instant, Barbarian Xiang hurriedly cupped his hands towards Xiao Yan's high-class private room and bowed. This junior has failed in his duty and allowed someone to taint the item that senior wanted to auction. I hope that senior can forgive me. If senior isn't satisfied, this junior will kill the person who tainted senior's divine item. As he spoke, he was about to attack Mo Bei when the owner of the voice spoke once again. Alright, I'll let you off this time. Treat it as giving you juniors a chance. If you do it again, there's no need for him to take action. I'll do it myself. When these words were spoken, everyone present instantly felt the temperature in the auction house become dark and cold. Barbarian Xiang and Mo Bei hurriedly nodded their heads in response. They didn't dare to be the slightest bit negligent. From the faint might that was transmitted from the voice earlier, Mo Bei could determine that the strength of this person was at least that of a 5-star Dozun. It wasn't that his northern Mo city didn't have elite Dozuns. However, with the strength of his northern Mo city, he couldn't afford to offend someone with such strength. After thinking for a moment, he understood the consequences in his heart and naturally admitted defeat. After this small interlude, the auction naturally continued. However, no one dared to speak carelessly in the auction house. They didn't use their strength to oppress others. Instead, they followed the rules of the auction, causing the atmosphere in the auction house to become a little strange. Chapter 35. Please recommend me. Please recommend me. In the auction house's high-class room, Lu Huabai looked at Xiao Yan, who was snoring away with his eyes closed. Lu Huabai's eyes were filled with gratitude. The corner of his mouth curled into a smile as he looked at Xiao Yan and softly said, Senior Xiao Yan, many thanks. N. Lu Huabai's eyes slightly narrowed, but he smiled once again. He didn't say anything else as he quietly watched the auction. After the previous matter, everyone was already quite interested in this auction. Although the words of that senior were a bit ruthless, the items being auctioned were all extraordinary items. Thus, everyone was able to accept it. Chang Fengyuan, this senior was only asking them to follow his rules. As long as they properly bid and didn't make any movements, this senior wouldn't pay them any attention. This was how an auction should be. After the interlude, Barbarian Xiang continued with the auction. A vigorous and clear laughter resounded throughout the auction house. Barbarian Xiang's face was filled with fierceness as he laughed loudly and said, All right. What happened just now was only a small interlude. There is no need to take it to heart. Next, I will introduce this cultivation method to everyone. As he spoke, he held the unopened scroll in his hand and raised it up high in front of everyone's eyes. Soon after, he opened his mouth and said, High Earth Rank Cultivation Method, Lightning Dragon Sky Roaring Art. Lightning Attribute Cultivation Method. After cultivating this cultivation method, one can use heavenly lightning as a companion and transform it into a lightning dragon within their body. This lightning dragon can be used to summon heavenly lightning. When a cultivator cultivates this cultivation method, they can also summon heavenly lightning during battle to help them attack their enemies. Its power is enormous and can be used as a great trump card. After he finished speaking, Barbarian Xiang withdrew his hand that was holding the cultivation method and extended his other hand that was holding the opened scroll forward. He then said, This is a Do skill scroll that complements the Lightning Dragon Sky Roaring Art. It is also a high Earth rank Do skill and is called Lightning Dragon Sky Shattering Art. Once these words were spoken, the crowd below the stage went into an uproar once again. Just a scroll of a cultivation method was already so powerful. If a Do skill was added to it, just how heaven-defying would its power be? Barbarian Xiang ignored the shocked expressions of the crowd below the stage and continued. Lightning Dragon's Sky Shattering Art is divided into 5 forms. First style, Thunder appears. Using the Thunder Dragon Sky Roaring Art to cultivate the power of the Heavenly Thunder, he could move heaven and earth, trigger the Heavenly Thunder, and use the power of the Heavenly Thunder to launch the strongest attack. Its power shook the heavens. Second style, Heavenly Punishment. Based on the foundation of the first style, it drew upon the Heavenly Thunder and used the might of the Heavenly Thunder to attack the enemy. Its power was immense. Third style, Lightning Snakes fill the sky. Using one's own fighting aura to transform into tens of thousands of lightning bolts, gathering the energy of heaven and earth to fuse with the lightning bolts, finally transforming into tens of thousands of lightning snakes, filling the sky. Cultivators could detonate all of these lightning snakes in an instant. The power of the explosion was great, and the attack range was wide, making it impossible for the enemy to dodge. Fourth style, Heavenly Flood Dragon. He merged all the Do Chi in his body into the power of the heavenly lightning and evolved it into a violent lightning flood dragon, which launched a fatal attack at the enemy. Its power was so great that it could destroy mountains and rivers. Fifth style, Thunder Dragon Destruction. It was the same as the fourth style, but it required the cultivator to cultivate the Thunder Dragon's sky-roaring art to the large success stage. The power of the heavenly thunder within the cultivator's body would be transformed into the final grade expansion Purple Lightning, fusing it with the lightning dragon that the cultivator had condensed, and using the lightning dragon's body to launch the strongest attack, Thunder Dragon Destruction. With the power to break the heavens, break all things, and shake the heavens and earth. Once these words were spoken, the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard from the audience. Even those who didn't cultivate lightning attribute cultivation methods were looking at Barbarian Xiong with fiery expressions. Their eyes were filled with greed and longing that couldn't be erased. There were even some people who hated the fact that they weren't lightning attribute cultivation methods and Do skills. Why did they miss out on such a good cultivation method and Do skill? Barbarian Xiong fiercely looked at the crowd beneath him and fiercely slammed his palm onto the auction table. After several fierce slaps, the sturdy auction table began to crack. After the sound of the collision subsided, everyone looked at Barbarian Xiong. Barbarian Xiong took a step forward and swept his gaze across the audience. He then said, Thunder Dragon's sky-roaring art, cultivation method, and Do skill. The starting price is 1,000 spirit coins, and each increment must not be less than 100 spirit coins. Now, let the bidding begin. Once these words were spoken, the faces of the people who were extremely excited and wanted to bid instantly turned dull. After that, they sat back down in their seats with dispirited expressions. Only the people in the front row hesitated for a moment before sighing. They looked at the two scrolls in Barbarian Xiong's hand and began to bid. 1,500 spirit coins. 3,000 spirit coins. I'll bid 4,000 spirit coins. Humph. Senior has such a good item, yet none of you are willing to bid. I, Mo Bei, am willing to bid 10,000 spirit coins for Senior's cultivation method. I believe that none of you have a better price, right? Mo Bei's eyes narrowed. He turned his head and smiled at the people in the front row as he slowly opened his mouth and said. Seeing this, the people in the front row slightly narrowed their eyes and wrinkled their brows. After pondering for a moment, they finally sighed. Barbarian Xiong on the stage also wrinkled his brows and was about to open his mouth. Humph, humph. Whoosh. Everyone's spirit shook in an instant and a trace of reverence appeared on their faces. Barbarian Xiong looked at Mo Bei with a sneer on his face and remained silent. At this moment, Mo Bei felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on his body. Cold sweat unceasingly appeared on his forehead and his pupils shrunk to the size of needles. He tightly clenched his teeth as he continuously sucked in cold air between his teeth. Mo Bei swallowed a mouthful of saliva with great difficulty. His face was flushed red and the veins on his forehead bulged as they continuously squirmed. After a long while, he opened his mouth and said in a hoarse voice. Senior, this junior knows his wrongs. This junior is willing to pay all the spirit coins I have. I hope that senior will be magnanimous and forgive this junior this time. Xiao Yan's eyelids slightly trembled when he heard this. However, he didn't open his eyes. He rolled his eyes and coldly said. Humph. Since you're from the younger generation, scram. Bang. The sound of flesh colliding rang out beside everyone's ears. Mo Bei's slightly skinny figure flew backwards with a bang and heavily collided with a pillar in the auction ground. With a poochie sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Mo Bei's complexion instantly turned deathly pale. However, he still forcibly propped himself up and half knelt on the ground. His entire body trembled as he respectfully said. Many thanks, senior. This junior will strictly abide by the rules for your kindness of not killing me. With the support of his subordinates, Mo Bei returned to his seat with great difficulty. Although his complexion was deathly pale, he still looked at the cultivation method with fiery eyes. The people from the other powers beside Mo Bei looked at all of this with a face full of schadenfreude. Soon after, the auction naturally continued. Barbarian Xiong looked at Mo Bei with a face full of ridicule. He then looked at the people in the auction house, especially the disciples from the powers in the front row. Since young master Mo Bei has said so earlier, I wonder if there is anyone who wishes to continue bidding for this Chi method Do technique, Thunder Dragon Sky Roaring skill. If there is no one else, then this D-class high-level Do technique Chi method will belong to young master Mo Bei. When everyone heard this, they looked at Mo Bei with ridicule. Soon after, they didn't say anything. They returned to their seats and calmly looked at the farce in the auction house. Barbarian Xiong swept his gaze over the people in the auction house. His gaze stopped on Mo Bei and he said with a beaming smile. Young Master Mo, in that case, this set of Qi method and Do technique shall be yours. Remember your words. Senior is not so easily fooled. When these words were spoken, Mo Bei's originally pale complexion instantly flushed red. With a poochie sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was on the verge of collapse. Mo Bei looked at Barbarian Xiang with a gaze full of resentment. A low ge sound came from his throat like a beast's roar. However, in the end, he could only sit in his seat and gasp for breath with scarlet eyes. In the midst of his humiliation and unwillingness, Mo Bei handed over all the spirit coins in his storage ring. Barbarian Xiang ignored Mo Bei's resentful gaze and looked at the large pile of spirit coins in front of him. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile. After a long while, under the fiery gazes of the people in the auction house, Barbarian Xiang called out a number. 28,000 spirit coins. Heh. Young Master Mo is truly extravagant. This is the first time in many years that my auction house has seen such a large amount of spirit coins. The people in the auction house gasped in surprise again and again. This was truly the style of a rich person. However, it was a pity that it ended up benefiting someone else. While gasping in surprise, there were also some traces of ridicule. However, the auction still had to continue. Barbarian Xiang waved his huge palm once again and another auction item appeared on the auction stage. The atmosphere in the auction house was once again heated up. However, there was a slight difference. Ever since Mo Bei, the price of each auction item had never been lower than 10,000 spirit coins. That was because no one dared to go lower than 10,000 spirit coins. Every time the final price didn't exceed 10,000 spirit coins, a cold snort would resound in the auction house for no reason. This caused everyone in the auction house to feel as if there was a thorn in their backs. Although they were reluctant to part with the spirit coins, what could be more precious than their lives? Money could only be spent if they were alive. In the high-class private room in the auction house, Lu Wabai and the other members of the Lu family looked at each other in dismay. They looked at the auction in the auction house and swallowed their saliva from time to time. Their faces were filled with envy that couldn't be wiped away. In the end, they even felt somewhat numb. Powerhouses were indeed people who didn't lack money the least. Alchemists and the like were only SOSO if they didn't have strength and ability. Time flowed by, and a day passed in this way in this fiery auction. At this moment, the sky was already turning dark. Finally, the last auction item was bought by a short and stout merchant at a high price of 40,000 spirit coins. At this moment, Barbarian Xiang finally let out a long sigh of relief. His gaze swept across the auction house and he nodded slightly. He then said in a clear voice, "Today's auction is exceptionally intense. It is also the largest auction held by the Heavenly Cloud Auction House in the Southwest region for many years. Of course, this is all thanks to the senior who gave our Heavenly Cloud Auction House such a good opportunity. I, Barbarian Xiang, represent the Heavenly Cloud Auction House in Xingyang City to express my gratitude to the senior." After saying that, Barbarian Xiang deeply bowed towards the high-class private room where Xiao Yan was. He then stood up and continued speaking. "Finally, I announce that this year's Heavenly Cloud Auction House auction has come to an end." Bang! Intense applause sounded from below the stage. Soon after, everyone in the auction house dispersed and the building was empty. Xiao Yan returned to the Lu mansion with a smile on his face. After returning to his room, Xiao Yan hurriedly counted today's harvest. After probing with his spiritual strength, the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth curled up into a smile. He had actually obtained a total of 280,000 spirit coins. This made Xiao Yan extremely excited. However, he still steadied his mind and tidied up a little before lying down on his bed and snoring loudly.